Anyone who's ever done anything worth doing has dreamed big, failed mightily, and mostly started from humble beginnings. This is a podcast about such people. The most fascinating podcast in the world is fascinating because of the stories of the human beings. Hello, everybody. It's Pat DeCerbo, the most fascinating podcast in the world. It has nothing to do with me, as those of you who know me know. It has everything to do with the people that agree to talk to me. And today we have a fascinating person. Kamilah Williams-Kemp is originally from St. Louis. That's where she was born. And she grew up in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, attended Northwestern University, and graduated with a degree in the neurological basis of speech and language disorders, which she chose not to pursue, and subsequently got her MBA from the University of Chicago. She's been a 25-year Northwestern Mutual executive and veteran. She's had all kinds of different jobs at the company, and she is one of the most well-rounded executives that one could hope to meet. She also has very good people skills. She's collaborative. She's a consensus builder, but also interested in novel reformulation and creative outcomes. So it's not just that we need consensus. We're gonna solve problems creatively. Kamilah is married to Jason, and they have two sons. Son Jason is 14 years old, and son Cameron is 7 years old. And I'm in the habit of asking people, as you may know, if you listen to any of the podcasts, Kamilah, about their earliest memories from their childhood. What do you remember from when you were a young child?
Yeah, well, first off, I have to say thank you for allowing me to participate in this. I always enjoy our conversations, and now we have the benefit of having one that's recorded for all to hear.
Oh, yeah.
The deep
tricky.
Conversations that we have, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for the opportunity to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So first memory. So despite the fact that I always have a camera and a microphone in my face, I'm actually pretty quiet, pretty introverted, and that was certainly the case as a kid. And my earliest memories were really about being on stage. I found my love for performance through dance. So I did ballet and jazz and tap and all that from the time I was 4, actually all the way through high school, and then was on the dance team in college. But my earliest memories were figuring out that I could take this kind of quiet, meek little girl and turn into someone who could kind of be on that stage and exude a quiet confidence. And so those lessons really started very early for me.
So you were on the dance team in college as well?
I was.
What was that like?
Well, it was great. By the time I hit senior year, we were actually a winning team. So, I love my alma mater at Northwestern. We have it's a little bit of a roller coaster in terms of our sports outcomes. So I happened to be on the dance team when we went to the Rose Bowl back in 1996. So that was an incredible experience. And my grandmother was so proud to see me in the Rose Parade and at the game and all of that. So it's like a full circle moment.
That's great. Was she a dancer too?
No, she was not. Interestingly enough, you talk about another childhood memory. My grandmother on my dad's side had really severe rheumatoid arthritis, and she was wheelchair bound for much of my childhood. So one of those lessons in perseverance, and I learned a lot from her just in terms of her grit and ability to persevere through that. I have pictures that I drew, as a kid. You're doing all of your beautiful artwork that will never be sold, but your parents think is beautiful. And I came across a picture that I drew standing next to my grandmother in a wheelchair. So, I mean, those are very, very early memories.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know you've told me, but can you describe your family? I forget how many siblings you have and whatnot.
No, I'm an only child.
Oh, you are? All right.
I am. And have we ever talked about what my name means?
No.
So this is going to be really telling for the rest of our conversation. It means the perfect one.
Ooh.
And so only
It's
child
a lot of
with,
pressure.
yes, exactly. And so I would still say I'm a recovering perfectionist. I battle that internally all the time.
Mm,
Yeah.
interesting. But don't you have some step siblings or something?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. All right. All right.
Yeah. So my parents were high school sweethearts, and I'll share a little bit more about the lessons that I learned from each of them. But then my dad remarried, and so I do have amazing step siblings that we didn't grow up in the same house together, but they're wonderful and have always been amazing with me. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha. So, how did you decide on Northwestern, meaning the University of Northwestern University?
Yeah, great question. So when I took the pre-SATs
Mm-hmm.
in high school, it was one of the first schools that I received marketing materials from. And I
Mm-hmm.
was just so enamored by this mix of the quality of the education, the beauty of the campus, and you feel a little flattered, right, that they're pursuing you. And I remember, when it was time to apply for college and my parents telling me, you have to apply to more than one school. Like, you don't put all of your eggs in one basket. I'm like, fine, I'll apply elsewhere, but this is where I'm going.
Mm.
And so I loved it. It was a perfect experience for me.
Mm-hmm. And close enough so you could get there in a couple hours.
That's right. But be far enough away that I knew, mom wouldn't just be at my dorm room
Mm-hmm.
without calling first.
Right. So when you graduated college, did you go right to grad school or did you work after college?
No, I work. So I started at American Family Insurance right out of undergrad, was there for a couple of years, and then made the leap to Northwestern Mutual 25 years ago. And I was about 10 years into my career when I decided to pursue my MBA. So I was working here full time, commuting back and forth to Chicago for that program. And interestingly enough, at that time, my dad was also really ill, and he fought a really long, heroic battle with cancer, and he passed away during my MBA program.
Mm.
And so it was a wild time of my life for sure. Got
So
a
you're working full time.
Yeah.
Did you have any kids at that point or?
No, it was
Okay.
just
All right.
before the first one was born. But you talk about learning a lot about yourself and your resilience, but also just the challenge of watching somebody that you love really suffer in that way. But he was, till the very end, very encouraging of me and my career and aspirations. And I was actually in London
Mm-hmm.
when he passed away.
Mm.
And my business school buddies took really good care of me to make sure that I hopped back on the plane to come back to the States. He had been in
Mm-hmm.
hospice. And when I was leaving the hospice facility for this trip, it was just a week-long trip.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was saying, I'll see you later and I'll be back as soon as this trip is done. I think he was saying his quiet goodbyes to me. And, I was in denial a little bit at the time.
Mm.
So I wasn't even overseas more than 48 hours when I was getting news that he was turning unresponsive and that the end was imminent. So, yeah, really,
Mm-hmm.
really difficult time.
Mm-hmm. So how did you get started at Northwestern Mutual? Like, what do you remember early on?
Yeah. So my husband will take credit for me coming over to Northwestern because I was interested in making a change, and he found the job posting. I mean, this is back when, people still looked in newspapers, which is probably something that any younger viewer would have no idea or any concept of, right? But I was really drawn to financial services. I was drawn to the protection that we provide to people, and I was just really interested in, starting and figuring out how I could parlay that first step as a disability insurance underwriter into a broader career. And part of what drove me, so I told a little bit of a story about my dad and my grandmother from that side of the family. My mom's side of the family, my mom's parents were entrepreneurs, and they had grocery store and other small businesses in the St. Louis area. And they fell ill when my mom was relatively young, and then really, really ill in high school, and lost pretty much, everything related to their business. And she gave up a full scholarship to MIT to stay to go to college locally so that she could be there while they were battling their health crisis. They ended up passing away a month from each other, a month apart, when she was only 19. And I just think about the impact that their illness had on not just their financial security, but then this ripple effect that would send through, the family. And I didn't know how it would manifest in my career, but the idea that I could help others avoid the generational reset that often happens if a family member didn't have access to the types of tools and planning and products that we offer. So there's a very deeply personal reason why I've been drawn to this career and have really enjoyed the impact that I've had on, our clients, our policy owners. And it's just deeply personal. And I don't want to have my children or my community have to continue to suffer in that way with that reset, with that regeneration.
So, but how, even in the beginning, even though you had that experience, did you have any idea what, that Northwestern Mutual could allow you to help people avoid that kind of thing?
So I had a loose notion of it, growing up in Milwaukee, that Northwestern Mutual is, the preeminent local employer and does this amazing work. I didn't know how that would play out for my career, of course, though, because as I look at each step that I've taken in the rearview mirror, it looks perfectly orchestrated, but on the front end of it, I had no idea. And part of it is, as a woman, as, a Black woman, I had to reconcile early in my career how I've had such an incredibly positive experience with so many people who are willing to pour into my growth and development and be a mentor to me and provide me with all sorts of wonderful opportunities to grow, with a very stark reality that there were very few women or people of color at more senior levels of the organization. And so it was really interesting, I would say, the first 5-10 years of my career, kind of wrestling with that and questioning, goodness, I couldn't be the only talented person in 160 years of the company, to be able to climb this corporate ladder. And so now for me, my passion is twofold. One, of course, is continuing to ensure that there's access to the financial security and the tools that I talked about earlier, but it's also paving the way for others, and the mentorship and the sense of belonging and inclusion that I try to bring to the workplace, these have become equal parts of my, I don't know, the legacy that I hope to bring. And still have a long runway left. I don't know if I should be talking about legacy yet.
Mm-hmm. Like, are you the kind of person that thinks about retiring someday, or will you work as long as possible?
I'll probably work as long as possible, only because I go back to the work ethic from my parents, and my dad was a computer analyst, and he was just, I get my quiet confidence from him. He was just a force behind the scenes, getting things done. And he faced a lot of adversity in his career, but he never allowed our conversations to venture into a space where I would somehow doubt my ability to
Mm-hmm.
maybe break through a ceiling or pursue what I love. And then my mom is a social worker by background, and she just taught me really early, don't judge based on what you see. You just don't know someone's life circumstances. And this combination of my mom's deep kindness and my dad's kind of work ethic, the combination of the two of them, I'm sure there's something on the other side of retirement for me, but I feel so far away from fulfilling my purpose yet here that, God willing, I'll still be here for long enough to be able to fulfill that.
Mm-hmm. So you get into Northwestern Mutual. What was your first job?
So as an underwriter for our disability insurance product. Mm-hmm.
And what does underwriter mean?
The most simple way to describe it is ensuring that anyone who's interested in purchasing our insurance products are actually paying the right premium based on the risks that they may present. And it was a really early lesson in understanding what it takes to run a financially stable company that is also out for the good of the policy owner,
Mm-hmm.
that we are really, really focused on ensuring that this whole concept of mutuality, which is policy owners owning the company and doing right by them, it started very early in my career, working with our advisors and those potential clients kind of one by one to really ensure that they had the coverage that they needed across first disability insurance, but then ultimately all the different products that we offer. So it was a great place to start my career.
Then what happened?
Well, I knew that there was more that I wanted to learn and contribute and really understand what was beyond kind of the maybe narrow focus that I was responsible for at that point. And this is where when I talked about my career path appearing to be perfectly ordained, on the front end of it, as I was moving through, I was trying to figure out creative ways for me to take my knowledge, experience, and apply it to different spaces. And, there are studies that suggest that women will only go for roles once they are 80 to 90% sure that they know everything there is to know about the role.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know how much I believe the studies, quite frankly, just because of my own experience. I really always thought about, where am I 80 to 90% ready to learn something new? Not that I already have all the answers. So as I was kind of moving through individual contributor to frontline manager, and then deciding that I knew I wanted to parlay my experience in different spaces, I just always had this confidence in my ability to learn new things. So I began exploring different opportunities at the company. I was in our human resources area where I did organizational development consulting. I went to our distribution function to really understand what it is like to understand our field advisors and field leaders before coming back into the product and underwriting space. So I think about my career in these thirds where it's like, okay, take a leap, get your foundation, take a leap to try something different, to grow and explore and learn, and then kind of come back home, if you will, to where I know that I can have a tremendous impact. So it's been a wonderful run, and I've enjoyed the ride. There is a part of me, of course, though, with being a recovering perfectionist, that I'm probably harder on myself than anybody could be on me. So I'm always thinking about what I could do to improve and have a greater impact. So my circle of friends and mentors try to help keep me grounded, that keep my perspective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
It's not easy.
No.
Everyone has the comparing mind. That's what the Buddhists call it.
Mm-hmm.
I can find evidence anywhere of my ineffectiveness, and it's takes a lot of self-awareness. Did you read the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield?
No.
Okay, that's a
The
good
latest
one.
book is a good one, and you
I
always
think,
end up,
yeah, that's a good one. I'll
great
send it
ones.
to you.
So the latest one that I'm reading right now is the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership,
Okay.
because I'm fascinated by the number of leaders who, we'll just say, maybe their impact does not match their intention. Really good
Mm.
people who want to do good work through their teams for the benefit of, the scope of their role. And I'm just fascinated by how that disconnect can occur.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of the reason why I kind of focus on being a human-centered leader, and that you could view people as irrational, or you can view them as living the best that they can through the lived experience that they've had. And the more I can honor that and then understand what it takes for me to be as intentional as possible, to be the type of leader that I want to be, I'm just fascinated by that whole dynamic. So that's my latest read.
Interesting. Who's the author? Do you remember?
I have to look it up because it's on Audible.
Oh, don't worry about it.
It's three authors that co-wrote the book and now have
Oh,
a
really?
consulting firm. Yeah.
Okay. So, what'd you do after disability?
Yeah. So,
Did you say?
yeah, after disability, I was an underwriting manager for a life insurance product line. And that's what I consider to be that first part of that first third of the career. And
Mm-hmm.
then that's when I was going back to school, I was going to business school, and moved into HR after that point. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then HR. And then when did you start to follow the track that you're on now?
Yeah.
I know it's kind of in retrospect, you can make it look smooth, but for most of us, it's just a series of accidents and trial and error. And I think you're kind of saying that too, but I don't want to speak for you.
No, it's true. So after the HR stint, I was there for 2 years, and I actually really loved the work, but I really wanted to be more in I'll call it the driver's seat of taking everything that I learned from organizational development and applying it to a business issue that I could build the strategy and execute against. And so that's when I made the leap over into our career distribution area, and had a variety of roles there across practice management, field training, recruiting, pretty much every element that we execute from the home office to support a healthy, thriving system of advisors coast to coast. I was there for probably 6-7 years, and it was a really informative part of my career, both personally and professionally. You know, I like to bring in my personal stories. So when I was in some of those roles, I was approached about actually going on a job assignment in another city for 6 months to really get a deeper glimpse into what it means to be an advisor in our system. And lots of people take job assignments, not a big deal, right? Well, at the time I was actually pregnant with our oldest when I was asked to pursue this opportunity. And I remember leaving this breakfast meeting where I was, honored to hear the pitch about this opportunity, and calling my husband and saying, "You wouldn't believe it. This is so crazy. There's no way I'm going to be going halfway across the country and have a new baby and all of that." And where we actually landed is that what better time to do it? I was going to be returning to work anyway. My mom was a career mom, and she was always there for me when I needed her. So I never had any doubt that I would be able to do the same. Of course, as a first-time parent, you don't realize how hard it is. My mom made it look a lot easier than the reality. But we said, you know what? If I'm returning to work anyway, does it really matter what city I'm in? We'll just relocate for those 6 months. So it's one of those things where you talk about the psychology of the moves and what was behind it and why it felt like perfect preparation for where I am today. It was the willingness to take some of those risks or face some of that uncertainty that helped me continue to advance in my career. So again, at the time, I just was trying to make the best decision possible based on my career aspirations, what would work for my family, and really to stretch myself to keep growing and venturing into new domains. And I've been really consistent in that being kind of the litmus test for what I pursue and how I pursue it. And I guess it's turned out all right.
It's funny that you should describe it that way. The most recent interview I did was with this architect from New York City who's been in 75 countries around the world and done all this crazy stuff. And he said, I'm just in the habit of putting myself in uncomfortable situations. Sounds like you are in the habit of doing that.
Yes, I am. And I don't know where it comes from, right? I end up having people ask me, well, there's two questions that I get most regularly. It's, how did you get here? And then there's, how do you do it? And I view those questions as like close cousins, where the difference is the time horizon, right? One is looking in the rearview mirror and one is more present day. And how did I get here is actually a pretty easy answer, because it is about mindset. It's about putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. It's, for me, especially given my more the quiet confidence that I typically bring, it's listening more than talking, because I can really pick up on what problems need to be solved and approach things maybe differently to get the best outcome possible. So I could rattle all of those things off, but how do I do it like in the moment? It's not like I'm at peace every day with every decision that I make or situation that I'm in. Life is complex, and to think that I have everything figured out and dialed perfectly so that I know the future outcome of the inputs right now. I think, I'll just say I have enough humility to know that what got me here won't necessarily get me to whatever is next for me. And it keeps me sharp. But when I'm mentoring people and they're asking how I'm able to do it, sometimes I'm like, I don't know. It's just sheer will, sheer perseverance, to be able to take the challenges and turn them into something that benefits, the company or the people that I'm working with.
Interesting. Because you were talking about outcomes, but like, I don't know about you, but I just have no control over outcomes. I focus when I'm thinking clearly. I focus exclusively on inputs, what I can control. And I'm usually exasperated when I'm focused on outcomes because they're never what I think they're going to be and want them to be. And then all of a sudden, if I focus on inputs, all of a sudden things start to happen.
That's right.
And these are old concepts,
They really are.
The Chinese were writing about them 3,000 years ago. But it's not so common for people to be focused on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why exactly I said it's the whole notion of having your own purpose and having your actions aligned to that so that you're having the impact that you desire. To your point, there have been so many books written on these topics, but it's harder to execute than it is to intellectually understand what's required. And I think, if we're all honest with ourselves about the fact that we're all a work in progress and keep leaning into that, we can at least put our best foot forward to try to close that gap between your desired impact or intention and the impact that you have on others. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But to the extent that I focus on outcomes, I undermine my effectiveness on inputs. So I don't know. It's such a paradox. It's like this, whenever I'm doing self-serving things, I never get what I want.
That's right. Absolutely.
And usually outcomes are, they're self-serving, even if it's like something I view as benevolent, it's still what I want.
Right.
And so I want to get it, and I'm going to go about getting it by however I'm going to do it. And then again, unmet expectations are the norm when I behave that way.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm ambivalent, it's not that I'm ambivalent about outcomes. It's just that I'm very focused on inputs and less focused on outcomes. Then I'm never disappointed. And
it reminds me of a conversation I was just having with my now high schooler. And over the summer, I was like, look, it counts now. Like, if you thought I was hounding you before, it's going to feel like I'm hounding you even more. But here's how I want you to think about it. And of course, I was getting ready for the eye roll from him. And when I was starting this conversation, I said, look, I want you to have optionality. You don't know what you want to do yet for your career, for your life. And that's totally okay. If you don't put in the work, you're going to find yourself where doors that you might want to go through later will be closed to you, and you aren't setting yourself up for the broadest set of choices and options that you might want. And so you can't, I was just telling him, you can't think about it as me hounding you. You have to think about your own, your work ethic, what you're going to put into it so that you can still walk through those doors of opportunity and not inadvertently shut them. And he was listening. I still got a little bit of the teenage eye roll, but I think it did stick with him. And we'll see. I'll have to report back to you on how this actually plays out.
You're
focused, just doing the best we can as parents, right?
It's risky. You're focused on outcomes. Mm-hmm. All we can focus on is inputs.
Yeah.
To me, that's the best thing I can teach my kids. Like if I'm, let's focus on the inputs. But I'm guessing that's what you're telling him too.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of my people that I know, like they tie their self-worth to how their kids turn out. Mm-hmm. And I know statistically it's more likely you have good kids from a good family and maybe troubled kids from a troubled family and whatnot. But statistically, that's not a guarantee. Mm-hmm. So I know good kids from bad families, bad kids from good families. And I think a lot of it's luck. I don't know. All I can do is what I can do.
That's right.
And, I also feel like people figure stuff out without me telling them how to do it. My kids included, but professionally as well. So what was next for you? Like, does this feel chronological to you at this point?
Yeah, I know
Okay.
I'm weaving in other elements of life as
Well,
we
that's
go
what
through
makes
the
it interesting.
chronology, but yeah, so I would, after doing this rotational assignment when our oldest was he's about 6 months old when that took place, I returned back to Milwaukee and came into this last third of my career that I'm in now, which is back into product and um, service and operations. And I remember being appointed to lead our long term care line of business. This would have been in 2015. And as a new executive, you're just trying to, at least for me, I want to speak for others, but trying to figure out what my impact was going to be, how I would remain this human centered, authentic leader while taking on this new opportunity. And shortly after stepping into the role, it became very apparent that that product line needed a serious boost in terms of kind of the financial stability. And I mean, this is something that was an industry wide issue with some of the challenges in the projections of future long term care needs and making sure that the products were priced properly such that we could guarantee that we would be able to pay all of those claims at some point in the future. That's like our bedrock as an institution. And again, being a newly minted leader in that space, to have to bring our advisors and clients through a very significant change, um, and doing it for all the right reasons for our policy owners. When you talk about earning your leadership stripes, yeah, that was a really pivotal moment for me to be able to stand confidently in the face of all of this change. Again, knowing that we were doing it for the right reasons. And, I still sometimes receive thank you letters from clients who went through some of the changes in the rates and all of that, who are thankful that they have that coverage in place. Because now, unfortunately, they have a spouse that is going through a long-term care event and are thankful that they know they can count on us. But again, rear view mirror, easy to talk about on the front end of it, making sure that we're handling it in the right way. It was a big challenge. It's a big challenge.
So what's your life like today? Is that too big of a jump from
No,
long-term care to today?
not at all. So today I sit on the company's senior leadership team as a direct report of our president, soon to be CEO. We are going through CEO transition, and we have a forced retirement age. Otherwise, I don't know if our current CEO would go, because he's kind of at the top of his game, but has a forced retirement. And so my world consists of, I talk about it as wearing two hats. One is sitting at that senior leadership team table and basically engaging in every decision that needs to be made for the organization. And when I tell you that it is a real honor to be at that table, given everything that I've experienced in my 25 years here at the company, to be able to ensure that we are making all the decisions now, near and far, to bring the next generation of policy owners and clients into the Northwestern Mutual kind of family and ensuring that we're remaining financially strong, all of, the kind of the pillars of what we represent. It's wonderful to be at the table for those conversations and those decisions. And the other hat is running my function, my organization that spans across all of the insurance products that we offer and underwriting, claims, and service. So if substantial part of our overall employee population, and certainly know the criticality of ensuring that this part of the business is healthy to meet the expectations of our policy owners and clients in terms of their long-term product value, and the experience that they have with us when they need us the most. Are we here for them? Are we fulfilling that promise for them to create that financial security? So it's amazing, quite frankly. I'm speaking about it in this calm, measured way, but it's an exciting time to be in this role, and I take the accountability so seriously, and just building out the team, the process, the technology, all that's required to ensure that we remain agile for the future while maintaining everything that the company represents and how people experience what Northwestern Mutual does for them. It's an honor.
So what does the future look like for you?
Yeah, so I joke sometimes that when I first started, underwriters had microfiche readers at their desks to look at old cases, and now we are using generative AI to help bolster her quality and efficiency. And so there's a part of me that I just need to follow the same playbook that I've followed to this point, which is stay sharp, stay focused on learning, stay focused on the agility, because we don't know what the future holds. And if we're focusing on the inputs, then the outcomes will follow. Sometimes when people ask me that question, it's more of a personal reflection on leadership and impact. And I feel like I still have so much to offer and to influence. I'm not seeking any grand departure from the path that I've built up until this point. It's really about maybe expanding my impact, leading at scale, to have people really experience the power of what it means to be a human-centered problem solver, and see what kind of impact I can have in that regard.
You want to be the president or the CEO?
Well, you can't ask me that I was going to say live. We're not live, but no, there are going to be some people who don't want to hear me say this because, like anyone who's had a successful path or career, you never count yourself out for what's next, right? And so my biggest supporters would probably be disappointed to hear me say this, but like my focus right now is really on delivering where I sit. It's probably the first time in my career that there hasn't been some vague idea of some next move and promotion. So I'm not complacent. I'll never be complacent, but my focus is not in the pursuit of what's next. It really is ensuring that I'm delivering what I need to, and we'll see what the future holds.
I mean, isn't that the best way? Like, there's a woman that I interviewed on the podcast. Her name is Mary Tykert, and she basically said the best job security and opportunity is being excellent at your job. If you're not excellent at your job, you're not doing anybody any favors.
That's right.
And there's a whole bunch of things that eliminates in the way of arguments and conversation and all that kind of stuff when it comes to promotions.
Yeah, and also speaking of things that are not in your control, I mean, showing up, being the best leader, best person I can be, delivering the results. Yeah, that's the focus for me.
Well, that's inputs, right? That's all you can kind of control. You can't control what a third party says or does, internally, externally, whatever. So is there anything else that you might like to talk about, or any questions you might have for me?
Well, I am curious because we've known each other for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that we've talked about in some of our prior conversations that I didn't put a spotlight on here today that you think the whole world needs to know? The whole world, everybody's going to listen to this. So,
well, yeah, I mean, we've talked a little bit about race and gender in the past, and you either by intent or default, you've left that out. Should we talk about it?
sure. Yeah,
Tell me all about it.
Well, I alluded to it earlier with reconciling a positive experience that I've had with the company and not seeing diverse representation at the most senior levels.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it was an unconscious bias meeting, maybe a not fully formed perspective at that point about what diversity and inclusion really could mean for a workforce, I just decided that I wasn't going to allow the fact that I would be breaking through firsts by pursuing the path that I was on, get into my psyche such that it caused doubt in my mind about what was possible. And it sounds almost like a cavalier sort of perspective. But I guess I just realized early on that whatever's happening within this organization is like a microcosm of what's happening in our broader society. And if there have been multiple generations of challenge from a diversity or discrimination perspective, I never thought that I single-handedly would change that, but I did focus on what I could control and how I could, influence my career path and create relationships with as many people as I thought could be in my corner, but doing it in an authentic way. It wasn't to try to climb. It was just truly to learn from amazing people that I happen to be around. And there are still times when I know there are people who question whether I should be in this role or what is my career path because of my my diversity. Now, the people who are closest to the business outcomes that I've been delivering have been very supportive and, of course, saying, you're just the best person for the job, period. But, it rears its ugly head sometimes. And I want to be clear, not at the company. I'm just talking about as I'm living day-to-day life, where you just feel that bias and that kind of scrutiny. And I've just chosen to understand that that is a reality in many, many parts of our world, but I'm not going to let it stop me. And if anything, it just will propel me to use my difference and use my voice to help pave the way for others to be able to fulfill their career aspirations. And when I say others, I mean a truly diverse and inclusive workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a really complicated topic, and one that, of course, conjures up a whole lot of debate these days.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I just believe that the foundation of a healthy, thriving business has to be through the lens of growth opportunity that diversity represents, and trying to rise above any of the bias or challenge that I might feel on a day-to-day basis. Again, just not here at the company, but as I'm living my day-to-day, and especially as I'm raising my kiddos and helping them understand what they may face in the future without it diminishing their view of what's possible for themselves, and to stay focused on making as positive an impact as they can.
Is there anything else we should talk about? Anything that you were leaving out, or any questions you might have or comments?
I mean, whenever you have a chance to reflect on life and career and parenthood and race relations in the US, I mean, my goodness, we've covered a lot of different topics.
Yeah,
So
really risky stuff.
I know. So we'll see how well received this one is. But no, I feel like we've covered quite a bit, and have appreciated the opportunity to reflect and have this conversation.
So my favorite question, as you may know, is the hyphen. It's the most important punctuation in the English language. Do you know why?
Tell me why.
Because it's between your date of birth and your date of death. It represents your life. So if we were talking about you posthumously and you weren't there,
Mm-hmm.
what would you want people to know about you?
Yeah. That I care deeply. And it sounds trite, but I'll just close with this, with my mom and her dementia that she is battling now. She lives with us. And knowing what she's going through every day, and she can still feel when I'm unsettled and try to comfort me when she's really the one that needs the attention and the love. It's the lesson that she has given me, and the power of that humanity, and the power of connection, and the power of caring about someone else more than you do yourself. I'm not saying I always get it right, but it's just really important to me, and that it manifests in the business results. But I want people to remember me as someone who cared deeply enough to try to pave the way for others and help them fulfill the best of what they could offer to the world. So it's really important to me.
It's funny because to me, it's kind of a paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you say your mom cares about you when she's the one that needs the care. But what makes her feel good is caring about you.
Oh.
So she gets her payoff that way. And it's also along the lines of what we talked about inputs and outcomes. Because if I just focus on being of service to my fellow human beings, I get everything I want and more.
Yeah.
And really, I don't need much. I have enough money to eat food. I have a car. I have a house. Like, I don't want any more stuff. You know, giving money to charity, thinking about giving more money to charity.
Right.
You know, like I love the action of my career and stuff like that. And I like to earn money. Don't get me wrong. But I don't want to buy any stuff. Like, money's just a tool.
Yeah.
And anyway, I think we're saying the same thing.
I think we are.
Thank you so much for your time. And I'll see you in Tampa, if not sooner.
That's
right?
right. Okay. Thanks so
All right.
much, Pat. Appreciate you.
Me too. Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. If you enjoy the most fascinating podcast in the world, please follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and follow on Apple Podcast.